big thing in February was the Canada truckers and the Bitcoin wallets.
Everyone forgot that already.
Yeah. I'm not sure, man. Like that comes up a lot with us. I mean, like yesterday, what's that guy, Vivek?
Yeah, Ramaswamy.
Yeah, even he brought it up.
He brought it up?
Yeah. Do you know him?
No.
He brought it up. Like it comes up a lot. We had BTC sessions on recently. We talked about the whole thing.
Well, of course, I mean, he was central to it.
But we weren't going to make that show. We were going to make a show with him about educating people on Bitcoin, and then we mentioned that, and then we made a whole show on it. I still get emails about it. I think a lot of people have forgotten, but I think a lot of important people haven't forgotten and are using that. And they were saying, just remember what happened there. Just remember what happened there. Like what happened to people who were trying to protest.
The Canadian trucker protest was a hard one for me because it, first of all, represented everything, all the reasons why Bitcoin needs to exist in the first place, why you need a freedom money, why you need a money that cannot be stopped, that cannot be seized. We saw a Western government be angry against its people that were protesting. They were doing peaceful protests, and they weaponized the financial system against them. They closed their bank accounts. They forced companies that were accepting dollar donations to seize the money and to close the fundraisers. They even went after people who donated bank accounts. So it was a massive wake-up call, I would say, to a large portion of society why Bitcoin is needed in the first place. We heard many, many times, this kind of thing happens in Venezuela or Iran or Russia or China. And everyone's like, oh, well, not in my country. It won't happen in my country, right? And for it to happen in Canada, adjacent to the United States, I think it was a massive wake-up call for people. Now, it hit me extra hard because it should be the moment that is ideal for Bitcoin, where Bitcoin really excels. This idea of people being able to raise money globally, secure it, spend it, and use it as necessary. And to be frank, it was a complete clusterfuck. There was a Bitcoin fundraiser that was raised. The government went after the known people that were using it. The Bitcoin address that was being used was reused, so it was very easy to track it on chain, privacy-wise. The Canadian government came out and said that no exchanges could interact with that Bitcoin. When it got distributed, every trucker that received Bitcoin was put on camera, so their identity was known. It was a bit of a mess. At the end of the day, the protests were, they were squashed. These people weren't able to use the Bitcoin to actually help them in their protests for the most part. And a terrific opportunity for Bitcoin to empower individuals was missed. And it hurt because that should be one of the easiest use cases for Bitcoin. This idea that if you are a protester, if you are a activist in a country and you want to raise funds, you should be able to easily do so in a private and secure fashion without having kind of heavy technical expertise. And in this case, some of the people involved were, diehard Bitcoiners that educate others, right? That know most of the best practices. And even they had difficulty doing it. So that was disappointing. I don't want to be a complete doomer on it. In the follow-up of that, we recorded a Citadel Dispatch was completely focused on how do you raise donations in that environment. And it's relatively accessible for people to do that. But that's not what happened, right? And it was just, for me, it was the moment... and you could go back. The crazy thing about Rabbit Hole Recap is it's like a time capsule because that's my weekly news show. We've done that every week for 4.5 years, me and Marty. And if you can go back to any week in time and kind of see how we were feeling at that time, right? And I was crushed. I was deflated. And on top of that, I for a moment there, it seemed like the U.S. might jump in and be involved with it as well. And it kind of seemed like the moment where the state goes against Bitcoin very hard in America and Canada, and they didn't. But they came close. And it just felt like we were not prepared. The Bitcoin network would be fine. It's built to handle this kind of thing. It's extremely resistant to change by design. But individual Bitcoiners would have felt significant pain in that situation, I think.
What if the fundraising had have been successful, mistakes hadn't been made, the money had got to the protesters, they were able to use it, and it lengthened the protest to the point where Bitcoin was so on the radar of the Trudeau government that they actually went fully against Bitcoin and banned it? Like, are we ready? Are we ready yet for that scenario?
Like I said, I think the Bitcoin network is.
Yeah,
I think the vulnerability is on individual Bitcoiners in a type of ban situation.
Because sometimes I think maybe you need a people revolution first, and I think we're kind of heading towards that. Was a people revolution. We're seeing serious threats to the Trudeau government. What's that guy's name? Polivier? Yeah. He's a Bitcoiner. He's gaining ground. There's a good chance he might become the next prime minister. Like, maybe it needs to come from the people first, and Bitcoin just continues to grow in adoption and resilience.
But my point is not the specific Canadian situation. My point is this has already been happening around the world. And it was just very visible of the failure of Bitcoin to be very empowering in that situation. It was very visible to a lot more people than it was in other situations, right? So I do a lot of work helping activists use and raise Bitcoin in adversarial hostile environments. This concept of using Bitcoin in an environment where your government doesn't want you to use Bitcoin and doesn't want you to use the banking system, right? And the major vulnerability that those people have is on the privacy side. And it's because, so I was talking to Navalny's people, right? And Navalny is the major opposition leader to Putin. They've been completely cut out of the banking system. But they've been raising Bitcoin for years. But they reuse the same exact address. So every donation that goes to their address is connected on the blockchain, right? And I said to someone on their team, I said, if you want me to sit down with you for an hour, like I can show you how to do this. I was going to basically switch them to BTC Pay Server, which we go over in that Citadel Dispatch episode, which is why I recorded the Dispatch episode in addition to it. So I had somewhere to send people instead of saying, let's have an hour-long conversation. I was like, I can set it up for you so your donor's privacy is good or better, much better. And they said, no, it's unnecessary. We've been doing it this way for years. Putin can't stop it, right? Because he can't. He literally cannot block the transaction. Now, where does that privacy shortfall hurt? Putin goes to Binance, goes, this is Navalny's address. Tell me everyone who gave you their ID, their KYC information, and sent money from Binance to this address. Binance just handed over all that information. So Putin now knows exactly who donated to his opposition candidate, and then he can go after them through all the different means at his disposal, whether it's throwing you in jail, work camp, closing your bank accounts, seizing your house, seizing your car. All of these different things are at his disposal, even though he can't seize your Bitcoin without breaking your kneecaps, right? And can't block you from sending to Navalny. That privacy shortcoming, that privacy failure put real people at risk in hostile environments. And that happens all over the world almost every day because Bitcoin is useful for those situations, but it's harder to use privately. And that's what happened in Canada, right? So all these people that donate, and a lot of people probably donated from Strike and Cash App and all this other stuff. And that's not even, very technical privacy, breaks, right? That's just, okay, this is the address for the donations. This is the address, who sent here. Let's hit if the U.S. government wanted to go after it, they could have found out, probably the 60, 70% of the people who donated. but it just never went to that step. They just went for the people who received it and were managing the funds.
Yeah.
It's just really sad.